Esther. That's okay. And let's quickly say, what did Esther do?
She saved her people.
Saved her people. Exactly. And our wonder words were imagine with God. Right? Okay. Second story, Zerubbabel.
I thought there's two more characters. I don't know.
Two more characters. Tell us what those two characters are, Jacob. Mordecai.
And then there's Hadassah.
Hadassah, which is the other name for Esther, right? Thank you. Okay, on to Zerubbabel. And the king's name is really simple, right?
Cyrus.
And what did Cyrus do?
He told the people that they could go back and build it.
Told the people they could go back home and build their temple again and worship the way they wanted to. And so we had imagine with God, and what's our second set of wonder words?
Build with God.
Build with God. Very good. Okay. Third story. Does anybody remember the third story? Well, I included some extra stories in there with that.
But do you remember you guys made a bookmark maybe with a little...
The mustard seed.
Yeah, the mustard seed. And it was a little tiny seed, but it grew into
a big tree.
A great big tree. That's right. And because it grew, our wonder words were grow with God. Exactly. Very good. Okay, we're getting closer to today. All right? So we got imagine with God, build with God, grow with God. Yesterday, do you remember the story? I told several, but the last one I told, somebody brought his lunch.
Jesus feeds thousands.
Jesus feeds thousands. That's right. Jesus feeds the 5,000 because
5 loaves of bread and 2 fish.
5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and they fed everybody, right?
And there were 12 baskets full of free
And
lunch.
12 baskets. You guys were listening very carefully. I love that. I just love that. So yesterday's wonder words were with God, right? So we ended yesterday with people eating, right?
Yeah.
Because eating's really, really important in these Bible stories. And one reason is God tells us to offer hospitality to the stranger. Because we know what it's like to be a stranger. We know what it's like to go into a place and not know anybody. So we want to welcome the people who don't know anyone. Abraham and Sarah welcomed 3 strangers into their home. And guess what? Though Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90, they told them they were going to have a baby, and sure enough they did.
I remember that story, you telling me that last year.
Yeah.
My long-time story remember.
Well, what they did was, when the strangers came in, they gave them food to eat. Because that's what this hospitality is about. When Jesus, after he fed the 5,000, he fed his close friends. The last time he was with them, he took bread and he broke it and he said, "This is my body." He passed a cup of wine and said, "This is my blood." In the Gospel of John, he even washes their feet. Yeah, that's what they said too. But he said, if I can wash your feet, you can wash each other's feet. Yeah. Ooh. But they ate together because eating together is very important. In a way, eating together says, "You're my friend." And when Jesus does that and offers to eat with you, it says, Jesus is your friend and God is your friend as well. So today, our story takes place on a journey. 2 people, 2 followers of Jesus, were going to a little town called Emmaus. It's about 7 miles away from Jerusalem.
Whoa.
They were walking along and they were talking about what they had experienced. Now, they had heard Jesus teach. They had heard him preach. They had probably been there when he fed the 5,000. Okay? They probably heard some of the stories we told this week, and they were there when Jesus did some of the things he did that we talked about this week. And they were talking about how he had been arrested, how he had been put on trial, and finally he had been executed, and they didn't know what they were going to do. Well, along the way, they met a stranger. What they didn't know is the stranger was Jesus. They didn't recognize him. So they're walking along, and he said, "What were you talking about as you walked along here?" And so they started telling him about the things that Jesus taught, the stories he told, the things he did. And they said, we thought he was going to be the Pope of Israel. We thought he was going to be the one to set us free and get rid of the Romans. And then they put him on trial. And they executed him. And now we don't know what we're going to do. They said, are you the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about this? We thought everybody had heard about this. And Jesus, though they still didn't know that he was Jesus, said, were you listening when he taught you those things? Were you really listening when he told you those stories? Because if you were, then you would understand what this is about. That God's love was shared through Jesus, and that it wouldn't be complete unless Jesus experienced everything that we human beings do, and even worse than most of us experience, which is what he did. He experienced everything a human being can experience, and showed us God's love in every single part of it. Well, they got to their house at Emmaus, these two disciples, and they were about to stop, and the stranger was about to go on. But they remembered the story of Abraham. They remembered the story of that Last Supper. They remembered the feeding of the 5,000, and they thought, now we need to invite this stranger in. It would be dangerous to be out walking these roads at night. Plus, God tells us to welcome the stranger and the sojourner because we were strangers and sojourners one time. And so they invited him in. He said, no. And they said, yes, please. We're supposed to do this. God tells us to do this. Please, come in and join us for our meal. So the stranger came in and they all sat down. And of course they had bread. That was the basic food throughout the whole history of the Bible. If you had bread, you could probably survive. Well, they put the bread on the table and they were just getting ready to eat when the stranger did something really, really strange. He picked up the bread and he broke it. And why is that strange? He's the guest. He's not supposed to break the bread. It's supposed to be the host, the people who invited him, who break the bread. But here, this stranger picked the bread up and broke the bread. And when he held it up, I don't know, maybe it was something about the way he broke it. Maybe they were reminded of other times, like when he broke the bread and shared it with the 5,000. Or maybe when he broke the bread and shared it with his disciples. But suddenly they knew who he was. This was Jesus. They thought, oh my goodness, we've been walking with him all the time. We've been telling him what he already knows. And they started talking to each other, and when they looked back, he was gone. They thought, where did he go? But they knew they couldn't stick around. They had to go back and tell his other followers. So even though it was getting to be night, they walked all the way back to Jerusalem, and they told the followers of Jesus what had happened. And the other followers said, you know what? Some women went to the tomb this morning and they found that the tomb was empty. We think Jesus is alive again. And the two people said, no, we know he is because he broke bread with us. It's interesting that Jesus wanted to be sure that these people knew that he was still their friend. And one way to show them that was by breaking the bread and offering to share it. Today's wonder words are walk with God. And that might be the most important thing for the whole week. Because if we walk with God, we're going to be all right. Because you know what? God always walks with us. There's never a time that God isn't with you, walking with you, loving you, helping you do the right thing, helping you grow and work and build and imagine and all those things we talked about earlier in the week. But it really is important to remember that no matter where you walk, no matter where you go, God walks with you. So you have any questions? No? That was a fairly simple story. All right? Yes, ma'am.
Oh. Never mind.
That's okay. That's fine.
sad.